that she has to learn That's How I Feel. That's the first song that came out. And you have to know how James named our group. Actually, the Sisters of Righteous, we were singing in the church choir. And I don't know if any of you remember Gene Red, but Gene Red was at King Record Company, and he came to El Bethel Baptist Church. And he knew us, and he liked the way we sounded, and he took us to King, and James liked us too. So James took us from Gene Red. And then James decided to name us the Sisters of Righteous. And we said, James, don't you mean the Sisters of Righteousness? And my mother and my family was always into education, so we were trying to use the correct English. We said, James, don't you mean Sisters of Righteousness? He said, no, I mean Sisters of Righteous. So we said, okay, Sisters of Righteous. And we've been Sisters of Righteous ever since. And he was such a wonderful man. He came to our house, and my mom died when I was a senior in high school. And James promised my mother and my father that he would really take care of us. And since we were teenagers, when we went to the studio, James lived up to his word. He made sure that nobody in that studio messed with his girls. And we were the only ones in the studio who could call him James. Everyone else had to call him Mr. Brown. And they wondered, why are the girls able to call you James and we have to call you Mr. Brown? He says, don't worry about it. But he's a very, very wonderful man. And of course, you all know that Roberta died in 2002. And she had cancer, and we thought it was licked, and then it spread to her bones, and she had bone cancer, and she couldn't handle it. And when I called James and told James that she was dead, he said he couldn't believe it. He just wouldn't take it. And so, of course, he was not feeling well then either, and he just didn't want anybody to know. And Roberta died in 2002, James died in 2005, but he wanted to be there at her funeral, and he sent the money. He insisted on paying for her funeral. He wanted to speak on the speaker during her funeral. He sent his assistant there in his place, but he told us that, you know, he didn't want anything to happen to us. So he was a nicer man than a lot of people think he was. I mean, he was always real gruff, and he meant business. You couldn't mess with him, you know. But we respected him, my family respected him, and he was a wonderful person. And thank you for this day.
Thank you. I want to say another word. I think we set it off, and I hope that we do influence a lot of the young people that are out here doing it. And what you have to do is you have to keep that focus. You cannot let those around you make you feel like you don't have it. Because what this world is, it is a competition. You're competing for everything. And I think the better you compete, the stronger you get, the more successful you're going to be. And I'm going to say that to all of you young people who are in here. It'll work for you, but the focus has to be there.
You know, growing up around Walnut Hills, we used to ride our stick horses around the King's recording company. And when the musicians used to come in, though they were country and western, we used to just come around and help them carry their instruments inside so that we could get inside and see what was going on inside the King's. And lucky enough, I grew up to not only be one of James Brown's famous flames, but the last song that was recorded by the famous flames in King Recording Company. I wrote it. Stand Up and Be Counted. But what I was singing was the expressions. They used to pay us session money to back up Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. And Sid Nathan heard us singing one time, practicing to do some things behind Hank. And he said, those boys sound so much like the Impressions. Let's name them the Expressions. And that was a couple of our songs that made hits in Europe were the Expressions. And just growing up and turning out like it was today. Of course, many young ladies here, we all worked together during those years. But see, I started singing up and down Virginia Beach back in 1954 and doing shows with Bill Doggett, Little Willie John, Little Richard, and to be here, being 75 in a couple of months now, I really feel blessed. And I appreciate all of you.
Round of applause for everybody, y'all. And don't forget, y'all, the party don't stop here. Selective Choice going down tonight, 10 to 2, over at the main event. What's the address, Rue? 853 Main Street. That's at the corner of, I believe, 9th and Main, or 8th and Main, one of the two. Selective Choice after party. We'll be rocking to 2 in the morning. Don't y'all miss it. Thank you for coming out. We out. Thank you.